The Wild West is a legendary chapter in American history when endless prairies met brave pioneers and gold mines lured fortune seekers. This area is remembered for its daring cowboys, noisy saloons, fierce conflicts with Native Americans, and the rise of new towns. In this video, I invite you to immerse yourself in the atmosphere of this unique time through a collection of historical photographs of the Wild West. Enjoy watching. This 1890 photograph shows Robert McGee, who survived an attack by Sioux warriors in 1864 when he was only 13 years old. During a wagon train escort in New Mexico, he was the only survivor of the entire group. The boy received numerous injuries. He was shot with arrows, wounded with knives and spears, and scalped. Despite the severe trauma, Robert survived and fully recovered. Later, his story became widely known and he even spoke publicly, showing his scars. This late 19th century photograph captures Robert Leroy Parker, better known by the alias Butch Cassidy, along with his accomplices. He was one of the most famous outlaws of the Wild West. He founded the criminal gang The Wild Bunch, which included notorious criminals like the Sundance Kid. The gang specialized in robbing trains and banks in the states of Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado. In this photo, you can see the aftermath of a robbery involving dynamite used to blow up a safe in a train car. These criminals were known for their organization and rarely resorted to violence against hostages. In 1899, Butch Cassidy and his gang fled to South America, where they continued committing robberies until they were caught and presumably killed in Bolivia in 1908. Despite his criminal activities, Butch Cassidy remains a cult figure in American folklore. This photograph features two Texas Rangers. Texas Rangers protected the state's borders from Native Americans, bandits, and Mexican border violators, patrolling a territory of about 1,000 kilometers. Between 1865 and 1883, they neutralized 128 Indian bands, participated in 84 battles, and recovered 6,000 stolen cattle, with only 12 men lost. After the threat from Native Americans subsided, the Rangers shifted their focus to fighting white criminals, effectively maintaining order along the border. This was one of the last photographs of William Frederick Cody, known as Buffalo Bill. He was a legendary American showman and the creator of the famous Wild West shows. Cody earned his nickname after killing more than 4,000 bison from 1867 to 1868 to supply meat for railroad workers. Later, he organized spectacular shows featuring real cowboys and Native Americans, which brought him fame throughout America and Europe. Cody ended his performances just 2 months before his death. He died on January 10, 1917, in Denver from kidney failure at the age of 70. Annie Oakley was a renowned female sharpshooter, a virtuoso with firearms. She performed in Buffalo Bill's show, and her acts included complex tricks. She could split a playing card in mid-air with a bullet, shoot cigarettes from people's mouths, and perform other impressive feats. Even many years later, Oakley retained her legendary accuracy. At the age of 62, she demonstrated her skill by shooting an apple off her dog's head with a precise shot, and at a competition in North Carolina, she hit 100 targets in a row from a distance of 15 meters. Oakley died at the age of 66, remaining undefeated in every competition she ever entered. In 1898, photographer Gertrude Casebier created a series of photographs of participants in Buffalo Bill's show. The images featured Native Americans in traditional clothing and ritual makeup against the backdrop of teepees. All of them were performers in Buffalo Bill's show. In these performances, Native Americans held a special status. They were paid the same as white performers, allowed to move freely, and could bring their families. Many of them used this opportunity to introduce the public to the culture of their people. This photograph was taken in 1887 in a bar in the town of Gilt Edge, Montana. It shows Calamity Jane and cowboy Teddy Blue Abbott, who switched hats and are having drinks. Calamity Jane was one of the most famous women of the Wild West. She became known as a skilled shooter and participant in the Indian Wars of 1870 to 1876. In 1881, she bought a ranch and opened her own tavern. Later, she briefly performed in Buffalo Bill's show, but left due to problems with alcohol. Teddy Blue Abbott became known as a talented chronicler of cowboy life. He left behind valuable records of cowboy life in the Wild West, which hold great historical value. This photograph is stored in the Montana Historical Society archive and is one of the well-known images of that era. Chuck wagons were indispensable assistance for cowboys during cattle drives. This invention is credited to Texas rancher Charles Goodnight, who modified a military wagon. These wagons had reinforced axles and a special compartment with sliding drawers for food and utensils. A water barrel was attached to the side, and dry cow dung was stored underneath for cooking. The wagons carried everything needed: food, dishes, water, fuel, and even whiskey reserves for disinfection. Jeff Smith was a well-known American conman and gangster who lived during the settlement of the Wild West. After his family's financial collapse in 1876, he moved from Georgia to Round Rock, Texas, where he began his criminal career. Smith earned the nickname Soapy thanks to his famous soap scam. He sold bars of soap with hidden prizes, but thanks to sleight of hand, the winning bars always went to members of his gang. In 1879, Smith arrived in Denver, Colorado, where he created his first criminal empire. On July 8, 1898, the conman was killed in a shootout at the Skagway Dock in Juneau at the age of 37. In the late 19th century, in Rockville, South Dakota, prospectors actively used hydraulic methods to extract gold. At that time, special flumes were built to direct water to mining operations. Despite the settlement having very little water in its early years, people still managed to extract about 150,000 barrels worth of gold in the first season using this method. This was made possible by repeatedly recycling the same water. The situation improved in 1878 when heavy rainfall significantly increased the available water supply, allowing production to ramp up to 250,000 per year. The young man in the top hat captured in the photograph is Bill Kidd, better known as Billy the Kid. He was one of the most famous outlaws of the Wild West era. Billy began his criminal career at a young age, committing his first murder in 1877 at the age of 17. During his short life, the Kid committed numerous crimes, including bank and train robberies. In 1881, the governor of New Mexico placed a bounty on his capture, and on July 14, 1881, Bill Kidd was shot dead by Sheriff Pat Garrett in Fort Sumner. Despite his criminal activities, he became a legend of the Wild West. On December 23, 1880, Sheriff Pat Garrett found Billy the Kid in a stone cabin at a place called Stinking Springs. After a brief standoff, during which some members of the Kid's gang were killed, the famous outlaw surrendered to authorities. Billy the Kid, along with two of his accomplices, was heavily guarded and transported to the jail in the town of Mesilla, where he awaited trial. This photograph is dated 1907. It shows cowboys relaxing in one of the saloons in Texas. This image demonstrates the traditional clothing of cowboy at that time. It was comfortable and practical, thought out down to the smallest detail. Boots easily fit into stirrups and helped maintain grip in the saddle, gloves protected from rope burns, and shirts and chaps provided comfort during long horseback rides. In the late 19th century, huge wagons pulled by 20 mule teams were used to transport ore across desert regions. Each wagon could carry up to 9 tons of ore. Typically, a caravan consisted of 3 wagons: the main wagon, a tender, and a water tank holding 4,500 liters. The total length of the train reached 55 meters, and when fully loaded, the weight was up to 33 tons. The driver controlled the team using a long rein and a whip. Over 6 years, such caravans transported more than 9,100 tons of borax from Death Valley to the rail station in Mojave, covering a difficult 266-kilometer route. This photograph features a representative of the Yakima tribe. At the end of the 19th century, these Native Americans faced serious hardships. In 1855, they were forced to sign a treaty by which they ceded their lands and agreed to relocate to a reservation. The conflict escalated when American prospectors trespassed on their territory, leading to armed confrontation. After the Yakima War, which lasted 3 years from 1855 to 1858, the tribe was finally relocated to a reservation. These events greatly undermined the traditional way of life of the tribe, which had been based on fishing, hunting, and gathering. Negotiations between white settlers and Native American tribes in the Wild West happened quite frequently. For example, a meeting between U.S. representatives and the Oto and Missouri tribes near present-day Council Bluffs included the presentation of peace medals, U.S. flags, and gifts to the Native Americans. During this event, there was a parade showcasing modern technology. However, not all negotiations went peacefully. For instance, during a meeting with the Lakota tribe, serious difficulties arose. The Native Americans demanded one of the expedition's boats as payment for passage and then increased their demands, asking for weapons, ammunition, and tobacco. The language barrier only made the situation worse, and the negotiations twice escalated into armed confrontations. In this photograph, you see a member of the Cheyenne tribe. The Cheyennes showed exceptional resilience in their fight for their land, earning a reputation as some of the bravest and fiercest fighters of the Wild West. Even under the harshest conditions, they continued to resist, maintaining the unity of their tribe and loyalty to their traditions. A vivid example of their courage was the legendary journey of 1878, when nearly 300 Cheyennes, including women and children, traveled hundreds of kilometers to return to their homeland, fending off attacks from pursuing troops. Despite heavy losses and pressure from the U.S. Army, the Cheyennes managed to preserve their culture, religious rituals, and language, passing them on to future generations. In this photograph, you see members of the Navajo tribe riding on horseback through Canyon de Chelly. Canyon de Chelly was a sacred place for these Native Americans. In addition, they cultivated peach orchards and various grain and legume crops there. In 1864, Colonel Kit Carson led a punitive expedition against the Navajo, during which their crops, orchards, and dwellings were destroyed. Despite the devastation, when the Navajo returned to the canyon in 1868, they found that some of the peach trees had survived, and new shoots had grown from the stumps. It took about 20 years for the orchards to be fully restored and for the Navajo to resume their traditional way of life. In the 1860s, Chinese workers became a key labor force in building railroads in California. Initially, about 50 Chinese worked on the Central Pacific Railroad, but then Americans realized these people were hardworking, diligent, and fast. They could work almost without breaks from early morning until evening. By the fall of 1865, the number of Chinese workers had grown to 15,000, which accounted for 4/5 of all builders. This photograph, taken by Alexander Gardner, is now held at the J. Paul Getty Museum. It depicts a wooden railroad bridge over the Kansas River, built in 1867 in Lawrence, Kansas. It became an important part of the Leavenworth-Lawrence-Galveston Railroad. This structure significantly improved transportation access in the region and played a key role in the development of the local economy. The bridge provided uninterrupted freight and passenger transport across the river, which contributed to trade between cities and the economic growth of the surrounding areas. This photograph features two Texas Rangers, John Woodard Saunders and J. Walter Durbin. The photograph is dated approximately 1890. Both Rangers dedicated their lives to law enforcement. Saunders became famous for his honesty and incorruptibility. He always acted strictly within the law, which was rare for that time. His methods became a model for young Rangers. Durbin was known for his weapon handling skills and exceptional tracking abilities. He participated in numerous operations to capture criminals, including the Dalton Gang. His ability to track fugitives in difficult terrain made him a legend among the Rangers. Both men made a significant contribution to the reputation of the Texas Rangers as one of the most effective law enforcement agencies in the Wild West. During the Silver Rush, Tombstone rapidly developed. With the arrival of a large number of prospectors and miners, there arose a need for a public dining place. It was then that the city's first restaurant, captured in this photo, was established. This establishment became not only a place for workers to eat, but also a place for business negotiations. Blacksmiths played a crucial role in the development of Tombstone during the Silver Rush. As the city grew and the number of miners increased, there was a high demand for constant repair and production of various silver mining equipment. Blacksmiths were among the most sought-after specialists in the city. They ensured the uninterrupted operation of the mines, repaired damaged machinery parts, and created new tools. Without their work, it would have been impossible to maintain a high pace of silver extraction. Samantha Fallon arrived in Tombstone in 1879. Despite the city being riddled with crime and frequent shootouts at the time, she managed to build her own business. She owned the San Jose House, the first hotel in Tombstone, as well as a haberdashery. This woman earned a reputation as a philanthropist, providing shelter and food to those in need. Later, Fallon moved to California. On May 25th in 1882, a devastating fire occurred in Tombstone, which destroyed nearly the entire western business district of the city. The OK Corral, known for the shootout involving the Earp brothers and the Clanton clan, was completely destroyed. The only thing that survived the fire was the corral's cine. The corral was later rebuilt. It gained popularity in 1931 when Stuart Lake published a biography of Wyatt Earp, and after the release of the film Gunfight at the OK Corral in 1957, the place became world famous, although the historical shootout took place not in the corral itself, but on Fremont Street. Today, the reconstructed OK Corral is part of the city's historical district and attracts tourists who want to see the reenactment of the famous gunfight. In the Wild West era, cowboys had almost no other bathing options besides rivers and streams. They bathed in natural bodies of water during cattle drives or at campsites, usually choosing early morning or evening when the water was warmer. Cowboys looked for safe spots with shallow currents and even bottoms. For washing, they used simple soap if they had it, or sometimes replaced it with ash or natural oils. Bathing was often combined with laundry. Clothes were rinsed in the water and hung out to dry in the sun. Despite the hardships of their work, cowboys still maintained their hygiene. This photograph captures visitors of the Egan Saloon in Burns, Oregon. In the late 19th century, saloons were an integral part of life in the Wild West. These establishments varied in level, from modest with simple furnishings to luxurious with billiards and live music. The menu of any saloon included many alcoholic beverages. Traditional entertainments included gambling with cards and dice, and later billiards, bowling, and darts were added. Although saloons were places for relaxation, fights and shootouts frequently occurred there. Flagstaff was founded in 1876 by a group of settlers from Boston who erected a flag on a pine tree in honor of the United States centennial, hence the city's name. Initially, it was a small settlement near a water source. However, in 1880, with the arrival of the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad, the town began to grow rapidly. A business district formed around the railway station, sawmills, ranches, shops, saloons, and hotels appeared. By 1882, the population reached 200 people, and by the early 1890s, Flagstaff had about 1,500 residents. This historical photograph from the late 19th century shows the main street of the town of Deadwood, located in South Dakota. Here, we can see a mesmerizing panorama of a thriving settlement from the Wild West era. Along the street are 1- and 2-story buildings combining wooden and brick structures with large display windows. The facades are adorned with bright signs of saloons and stores, done in a style characteristic of that time. Horse-drawn wagons move leisurely along the street, and merchants crowd around the shop windows. This photograph perfectly conveys the spirit of the era. In the 19th century, thousands of Americans headed west of the Mississippi in search of a better life. Their main means of transport were covered wagons pulled by horses. Traveling alone was dangerous, so caravans of several dozen wagons were formed. There were several main routes for settlers. The longest of them was the California Trail, which stretched about 8,000 kilometers. More than 250,000 people followed it from the 1840s to the 1860s. The journey from the Mississippi Valley to the Pacific Ocean took about half a year. The wagons carried only the essentials: stoves, seeds, tools, weapons, dishes, and household items. Along the way, people faced many dangers: water shortages, attacks by Native Americans, diseases, and natural obstacles. The pass through the Sierra Nevada mountains was one of the most difficult sections on the path of settlers heading west. Crossing the mountain range required great caution due to the challenging terrain and unpredictable weather conditions. Early snowfalls could catch settlers by surprise, making further progress impossible. People had to consider many factors: the availability of water sources, the condition of the livestock, and the time of year to safely navigate this section. During the Dakota War of 1862, the Santee Sioux attacked settlements along the Minnesota River, trying to drive out white settlers. All the local residents fled, forced to live in the fields at the risk of being captured. More than 800 settlers failed to escape, and many were taken prisoner. After the uprising was suppressed, thousands of settlers abandoned their homes, and the Santee Sioux were expelled from Minnesota to Nebraska and South Dakota. The U.S. Congress confiscated and sold their lands. Artesian wells became a real lifesaver for settlers in the arid regions of the Wild West. These natural sources are pressurized underground waters located at depths from 100 to 1,000 meters. When a well was opened, impressive fountains of clean water would burst forth. Thanks to artesian wells, agriculture became possible far from rivers, and new towns appeared in previously uninhabitable areas. These very wells made it possible to settle vast territories of the American West, where permanent habitation had previously been almost impossible due to a severe shortage of water. In the Wild West era in Nebraska, settlers built sod houses because other construction materials were scarce. Sod was cut into rectangular blocks and laid in double rows with alternating directions for strength. Walls were built taller than needed, as the sod would settle over time. To prevent leaks, a muslin ceiling was sometimes used. The only significant expenses were for windows, a door, and materials for framing them. Sod houses retained heat well in winter and stayed cool in summer, were fire-resistant and inexpensive to build. Ike Kleininen was a member of the outlaw gang the Cowboys and took part in the famous conflict with the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday. The Clanton family became notorious for their reckless behavior, cattle rustling, and run-ins with the law. Ike was known for his hot temper and boastfulness. He continued stealing cattle and was killed in 1887 while trying to escape from a detective attempting to arrest him. The figure of Clanton often appears in literature and film dedicated to the Wild West era. Dodge City gained fame as a place where cowboys from across the region came at the end of long cattle drives in the late 19th century. Here, they could rest, spend their earnings, and enjoy themselves. Despite its reputation as a wild town, Dodge City was known for its unusual approach to maintaining order. At the city entrance, there were banners and signs warning of a strict ban on carrying firearms. All arriving cowboys were required to surrender their weapons upon entering the city. This policy helped reduce crime levels, although the town still witnessed many fights, shootouts, and other violations. The Dodge City Peace Commission was established in 1883 during a conflict known as the Dodge City War. The dispute arose between Long Branch saloon owner Luke Short and the city's mayor Lawrence Digger, who was attempting to shut down the establishment. Influential figures such as Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, and other famous Wild West gunmen intervened in support of Short. Under pressure from the governor and the Santa Fe Railroad Company, the mayor was forced to back down. This photograph was taken on June 10, '83. On the Verde, the Dodge City Peace Commission succeeded in allowing saloons, dance halls, and gambling houses to reopen. In 1874, Lieutenant Colonel George Custer led an expedition into the Black Hills with a detachment of about 200 men. The group included the 7th Cavalry Regiment, artillery, 110 wagons, and a 2-month supply of provisions. Their tasks were to find a site for a new fort, explore routes, and check for the presence of gold. The expedition reached the Black Hills on July 22nd. During the campaign, rich gold deposits were discovered. Custer's reports of the findings triggered a massive gold rush, which led to conflict with the Sioux, who, according to treaties, owned the land. During the Klondike Gold Rush era, prospectors had to overcome a difficult water route along the Yukon River using homemade or rented boats. Many of these vessels were in poor condition, as they were typically old fishing boats, barges, or even coal barges. On Lake Bennett and Lake Lindeman, gold seekers built rafts and boats to cover the final 800 kilometers to Dawson City in the spring. The journey was dangerous. Boats often crashed on the river's rapids, especially in Miles Canyon. Some prospectors, lacking reliable boats, simply let their vessels drift downstream unattended, planning to retrieve them on the other bank. This late 19th century photograph perfectly captures the atmosphere of Wild West saloons. It shows patrons sitting in the dim light of lamps. Behind the bar, a bartender greets everyone, always ready to pour more drinks. Paintings and deer antlers hang on the walls, and the main attraction of this place is the roulette table. In the Wild West era, deals were made in saloons, new acquaintances were formed, and sometimes even someone's fate was decided there. In 1905, Hazen, Nevada had many popular saloons that were considered disreputable places. These drinking establishments were typical of the Wild West. Miners, cowboys, and gamblers gathered there. One saloon that stood out was the Shamrock, which, like other similar establishments of the time, was known not only for alcohol, but also for various shady entertainments, as well as frequent brawls and shootouts. In the late 19th century, building railroads in Arizona was difficult and dangerous. Workers toiled in the harsh desert conditions, laying tracks through canyons and mountain ranges. They used picks, shovels, and other hand tools to prepare the ground. Builders faced water shortages, extreme temperatures, and attacks from wild animals. Many workers were immigrants willing to work for low wages for a chance at a better life in the Wild West. In 1907, the Arizona Club appeared on Fremont Street in Las Vegas. It became one of the very first casinos in early Las Vegas. At that time, the city was just beginning to develop as a gambling hub, attracting miners and travelers. Later, other clubs began to appear, which served not only as places for gambling, but also became centers of public life in the growing city. This photograph captures Joe LaForce, a well-known lawman of the Wild West. He is best known for his work on the Tom Horn case. LaForce suspected Horn of killing 14-year-old shepherd Willie Nickel and set up a clever trap. He lured the suspect into his office in Cheyenne by offering a job from Montana cattlemen. During the meeting, under the pretense of a friendly chat over drinks, LaForce got Horn talking about his professional skills. In a neighboring room were a witness and a stenographer who recorded the entire conversation. The collected evidence led to the conviction and execution of Tom Horn. This photograph features Iron Tail, a chief of the Oglala Lakota tribe, together with a bison named Black Diamond. Few people know that this very bison served as the prototype for the image on the US 5-cent coin. Black Diamond lived in the Bronx Zoo in New York. Sculptor James Earl Fraser chose this animal to create the coin's reverse, noting that this bison was the most characteristic representative of its kind. The coin featuring the bison standing on a hill was named the Buffalo Nickel and was minted from 1913 to 1938. The design proved so successful that it was reused in 2001 for commemorative silver dollars and since 2006 for the American Buffalo Gold Coin series. Short railway lines played a huge role in the development of Boise and the entire state of Idaho. They provided transportation links between Boise, Nampa, and other towns in the region, allowing for efficient freight transport. Thanks to these rail lines, the city gained the opportunity to trade actively and develop industry. A key role was played by the 40-kilometer line from Nampa to the Boise airport, which became a vital transport artery. Nampa housed the main warehouse, from which goods were transferred to the main Union Pacific lines. The appearance of rail lines contributed to business development in the region, the emergence of new enterprises and jobs, which led to population and economic growth in Boise. In the Wild West, a special method was used to transport water. One barrel was attached to a horse so that it dragged along the ground, while other barrels were carried in a wagon pulled by a mule. The horse with the barrel was used to transport water in places where a wagon could not go, along narrow trails or over rough terrain. The mule and wagon provided more comfortable transportation of the main water supply. This method allowed a relatively large volume of liquid to be transported simultaneously, which was critically important for survival in the harsh conditions of the Wild West. This late 19th century photograph shows two women talking on a street in Helena, Montana. Helena was founded in 1864 by gold prospectors who discovered gold in a nearby ravine. The city was originally called Last Chance, but later received its modern name in honor of Saint Helena, the patron saint of miners. By 1888, the city had about 50 millionaires, more per capita than any other city in the world, and the main street ran along that very gold-bearing ravine. Until the early 20th century, Helena remained the most populous city in the state of Montana and retained its status as the capital of the territory and later the state. This photo shows the Buffalo Soldiers, African-American troops who served in the U.S. Army starting in 1866. They received their nickname from Native Americans who noticed the resemblance of their curly hair to bison fur. Buffalo Soldiers performed important duties, escorting stagecoaches and trains, guarding borders, fighting cattle rustlers and illegal traders. These soldiers participated in numerous campaigns against Native American tribes, especially the Apaches, and made a significant contribution to the settlement of the Wild West, despite harsh service conditions and outdated equipment. The person captured in this photograph is Herman Lawmen, who was kidnapped by Apache Indians as a child and lived among them for about 6 years. The Indians adopted him, and during that time, he fully adapted to their culture and even achieved the status of a minor chief. However, later in the spring of 1876, he killed an Apache shaman in revenge for the death of his adoptive father, after which he was forced to flee from a retaliation by his tribesmen. And that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon. Your support means the world to me. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.